Thank you. Personal protective equipment at work, protected characteristics bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, June the 7th.
Friday, June the 7th. Excellent. Right, we now come to the 10-minute rule motion. Simon Lightwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require providers of electronic communications networks to allow their customers to access certain public sector websites free of charge and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to present this bill, which would make a significant difference to the financial security of so many struggling households up and down the country. As we all know, the cost of living crisis has squeezed household finances of millions. The last thing our constituents need, when they're already worrying about having to choose between heating their homes and putting food on the table, is running out of data to access vital public services on the internet. In October 2023, the All-Parliamentary Group on Digital Inclusion found that nearly 2 million households in the UK were struggling to pay for broadband, nearly double the number compared to the year before. Indeed, a study by Citizen Advice in May last year reported that 12% of households they surveyed said that they'd had to cut back or stop spending on broadband entirely during the previous 12 months. For those on universal credit, the situation is even more stark. The study found that 16% of claimants said that they were behind on their broadband bill, compared to just 4% of non-claimants. 14% of those universal credit claimants who said they'd had to cut down on their internet usage due to cost also found it difficult to manage their universal credit account as a result. Mr. Speaker, in an age where we are increasingly able to access more of our public services via the internet, particularly via mobile browsers, we must make sure that we don't leave people behind during this digital revolution. Our reliance on the internet became acutely clear during the pandemic. NHS Digital recorded 1.2 billion visits to the NHS web pages between October 2021 and September 2022, with 131 million visits to the vaccination booking pages. The increasing prevalence of public information and resources being available online is a good thing. As a former NHS worker myself, I know it has the capacity to make our public services more efficient, more agile and better value for money for taxpayers. But being able to access the NHS website should not be constrained by someone's financial situation. Likewise, someone on universal credit shouldn't have to worry about not being able to access their account because of their data allowance. Simply put, we know that those with the greatest need to access online services are often the ones facing the greatest barriers to do so. During the pandemic, operators like Vodafone, EE, Virgin Media, and O2 and 3 gave their customers free online access to the NHS website, COVID information, the NHS app, and online education resources like BBC Bitesize and the Oak National Academy. These operators recognised a huge surge in need and the barriers that some people would face as a result. This procedure is known as zero rating, whereby accessing any of these websites would not consume a user's mobile data allowance. Indeed, since the pandemic, Virgin Media, O2 and 3 continue to offer zero rating to their customers for various public service websites, after seeing what a vital help it can be for their least well-off customers during the cost of living crisis. My bill very simply proposes that we continue this good work that some operators have already done by extending this precedent into a legal requirement for all network providers operating in the UK. By making .gov.uk and .nhs.uk sites zero-rated, we can extend universal free access to the most vital services like universal credit, local authority services and NHS health information for everyone, no matter their financial situation. Mr. Speaker, zero-rating public service websites is by no means a silver bullet, but it will help ease one of the many financial burdens that households are currently facing. By giving users free access to .gov.uk web pages, for instance, we could ease some of the financial pressure and stress from some of the most vulnerable in society. For many households, they rely on a mobile phone for all their internet access, but they're often dependent on expensive data top-ups to stay online. By removing costs from .gov.uk and .nhs.uk sites, households who visit these services will not have their data affected and will still be able to access them even when they're out of data. In my constituency in Wakefield, we have a fantastic organisation called Wakefield Technology for All, providing digital access support to so many households, as well as providing digital devices themselves. A young woman came to their support hub last year, needing the help with rebuilding her life after multiple incidents of sexual violence. As well as having a tight budget to support herself and her children, she had to deal with no carpets, no bed and no curtains. But what she did have was a donated laptop from Wakefield Technology for All. But she struggled to find the money for the data. Often her access to websites such as the government services and NHS and local council services would be reactive and unplanned. She'd often find herself running out of data when needing to access these vital services. She would therefore, during unimaginably stressful circumstances, have to rely on seeing someone face-to-face at another location or simply do without these services completely until she was able to purchase more credit. So many of the poorest and most vulnerable households have enough on their plate without needing the constant worry about how they'll access crucial public services and information if their data allowance runs out. My constituents shouldn't have to worry about the lack of data preventing them from accessing the vital public services and information that they need. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know that bills such as these, there's often a question of how. But this is a rare situation where this has already been done before. As I've already set out, during COVID and during the ongoing cost of living crisis, some networks stepped up and introduced zero rating. Clearly, deployable technology for zero rating already exists. Zero rating was described by a 3 Mobile representative during the pandemic as simple as flicking a switch. Indeed, some networks already offer zero-rated access to social media as a perk to their customers. But compared to social media, the cost for operators to zero-rate access to domains like .uk, .gov.uk and .nhs.uk, for instance, is tiny. As the government services this bill could cover are largely text-based, the amount of data consumed is a minute fraction of what it would take, for instance, to stream a 4K video on YouTube. Once the domains are established, verified and shared with operators, it will be a seamless transition to ensuring that millions of the most vulnerable households are still able to access vital health, education, employment and benefit services even when their data runs out. Mr. Speaker, I know that this bill would not solve the financial problems so many are facing up and down the country. That's not the intention of this bill. My bill would, however, ensure that everyone can still access essential services that they need to get on in life, even if they run out of data. I want to pay tribute to all those who are working so hard across this House and in the other place on digital inclusion. In particular, I'm extremely grateful to the APPG for Digital Inclusion, who've worked tirelessly on so many aspects of digital inclusion. I also want to pay tribute to organisations outside of Westminster, including Virgin Money, whom I was able to visit in my constituency just a few weeks ago. They're working with an amazing team at the Good Things Foundation to provide a national data bank, increasing access to the internet for their customers and some of the most vulnerable households up and down the country. In closing, Mr. Speaker, this bill would give millions of households the security of knowing they can always access crucial public services that they depend on, from health advice to information about universal credit applications to accessing important local government services. We still have a long way to go before we solve all the problems of digital exclusion, and this bill does not try and fix all of the myriad problems that come with it. But with the technology ready to go and the clear need for action on this issue, this bill would nonetheless take us one step closer to closing the digital divide for good. Thank you.
That the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Dame Angela Eagle, Stella Creasy, Miss Sharon Hodgson, Kate Holland, Fabian Hamilton, Nadia Whittam, Marie Rimmer, Kat Smith, Naz Shah, Sarah Edwards, Dr Rupert Hook and myself, Mr. Speaker.
Simon Lightwood.
sector website data charges bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 17th of May.
Friday the 17th of May. Well done, sir. Point of order, Patrick Grady.